Wake the dead.
Wake the dead! Wake the dead!
With Sean McCann. Greetings, and welcome to another Wake the Dead. Today we are pleased to have a great friend of the show, his first time here as a guest, Mr. Brandon Martin. Brandon, welcome.
Howdy, Sean. It's great to be here, man.
Well, it's great to have you, brother. And we are brothers from another mother, and I'm very glad to have you here on my show today. You're even a fellow Buckeye here in Ohio, and we're like neighbors, and I'm glad that we're finally getting to do this show. And if I've been juggling shows and trying to get ideas out there, and I'm glad that finally today we get to sit down and have this conversation.
Yeah, man. I've been following your work for a while. I've really been enjoying it. And I know you reached out to me a few times in the past, and I always enjoyed the communication that we had. And, I really like your gear, your logo, the anarchist symbol that you got. I remember printing up a shirt back in the day of one of those, which was cool.
Yeah, man. The pyramid one.
The pyramid one. Yeah.
I'm so proud of that design.
Yeah. It was so cool. So I really enjoyed that. And it's an honor and a pleasure to finally be on here. And I get it. We always juggle projects. We got all kinds of stuff going on. I feel that. So no offense that I haven't been on here. I'm
man.
Doing the work. I'm just glad you're doing it.
Cheers, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's like it comes from inside. Like I feel like I have to talk about this or that. And and your seat, you are the creator and host, I guess, of the S.E.E.D conference that's been going for many years now. And you invited me to S.E.E.D 4. We've been friends on the internet, on Facebook and such, long before I got kicked off Facebook. And we know each other pretty well, and we're very well acquainted. And you invited me to put on a presentation for S.E.E.D 4. And before that, I'd never really done a presentation. I'd never really put my thoughts in order to put it out to the public. And you inviting me gave me a little kick in the butt to get me to line everything up and get my thoughts straight and to create a video. And that was kind of pushed me off into the deep end. And then I started swimming from there. And I thank you for that, because I don't know if I ever would have started.
Right. That seems to be like my trend, because I'm the one who got Douglas and Nathan to start doing stuff too with the S.E.E.D conference. So yeah, it was a pleasure to have you on. Your presentation was great, even though it did get censored, obviously, which was horrible.
Oh, right. Yeah, they cut the stream halfway through, man.
Yes, they did, which was horrible. But it was a great presentation. You got really deep into topics. I'm actually writing an essay on Eyes Wide Shut. It's one of my favorite movies, honestly. So I've done a lot, and your work kind of helped me to see a lot of other things that I wasn't connecting in that. So I was really appreciative of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, or you want to talk about off air, talk about the essay, if if I can help in any way, contact me in any
maybe I'll send it over and see what you think of it.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So yeah, you started this conference, and you've been in the crew for a long time now, and you've been doing how many S.E.E.D conferences have you done so far? 5?
We have the 5th one coming up in September. So it will be September 23rd and 24th this year online. So I started it back in 2017, I believe, which was the spring of 2017. I was trying to kind of bring in the alternative positive energy during the season of sacrifice, which is what we're in currently.
It just started.
Yeah, it just started. And So I was like, I think that's the best time of the year to do it. But unfortunately, the S.E.E.D 5 conference is going to be at the end of the year just because there's so many other conferences going on and I don't want to overlap them, which is a really good thing. That's
Right.
the positive thing. We got the Funnel 3 conference, which I'll be presenting at that as well.
Awesome.
I have a presentation called the True Spirit of Freedom coming out, which is going to be really, really hard hitting. Only an hour long, but I'm used to doing like 6-hour, 9-hour presentations, so it's hard for me to fit everything into 1 hour sometimes.
I agree. It is
Yeah,
tough.
it's really, really tough. But yeah, the S.E.E.D conference is an amazing event. Top caliber speakers coming from all over the place. You, Douglas, Mark Passio. We got all kinds of great people that are feeding off of that. So it's been an honor to be able to put that into the community.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, it's a really, it not only gave me a kick in the butt, it also shows everybody else, the viewers, like what we can do.
Right.
You're just a regular guy. I'm a regular guy. James is a regular, Cordner, James, my friend. He put on a conference too. And the Funnel Conference is being put together by Will Keller. And Chris Jansen, I think, is involved in that as well. And we're just regular guys,
Yep.
and we're taking regular, like, real information that everybody should have, and we're presenting it in a nice way for people to easily take up, and that should inspire others. What, all you listeners out there, what is it that you think about all the time that you really want people to know? How is it that you can put these ideas in a form that's easily, attainable for other ears to understand? It's really a great exercise, I think. And, I thank you very much for doing this. It's very important that we need somebody out there kicking everybody in the butt, telling them, getting them
Right.
started.
Right. Yeah, get some inspiration, some motivation out there to the people. And yeah, obviously conferences aren't going to be the main solution to the problems we're facing, but it is a step and it is beneficial to spread information.
Right.
And it gets people together, interacting with each other, especially if they're physical conferences.
Yeah.
And then also you get a collection of great workers just bringing so much amazing, spectacular, content to the table. And I always learn more when I do my presentations than I have like on my own, really, because it puts pressure on you. You have to compete with yourself and you have a deadline and you have all these, requirements that you have to meet to actually get that presentation done.
Right.
And you want to make sure it's good. You want to make sure it's quality, right? So you're like, okay, I want to make sure that this is going to be good. It's going to be easily digestible, but also straight to the point, and I'm going to have good truth in it, and it's going to help other people raise their consciousness or help them with something, whether it's mental health or battling the corruption in the system, whatever it might be.
Right.
So it's always been a really motivating factor for myself to learn more in many ways. And I was inspired by the Free Your Mind conference. So, I went to Free Your Mind 3 and I was like, oh, I own a compound in Ohio. I can do a conference out of my own place,
Right.
I got a big community. So it's like, yeah, I'll just start doing it at my own place. So the first conference was actually in a barn in Ohio, right next door to a big skate bowl, so it was right adjacent to it. So it was really, really crazy. And the funny thing about that little story here is that it was so cold that spring. And so we had to plastic the whole barn up and then put like turbo heaters in there and jet heaters. And everybody was freezing. They were bundled up and, but we all sat through it. I mean, it was like 32 or something. It was freezing. And, it's a barn. So there's gaps everywhere. There's no way we're heating that thing.
Yeah.
But we did it, and from there it just kind of snowballed and just kept going.
Awesome. Yeah. You mentioned that, that is Skatopia. Your home. You grew up at this haven for skaters, I guess.
Yeah.
Your dad is a famous skater, and he built this theme park, I guess, for skating.
That's a good word for it. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Skatopia.
Yeah, it was kind of just an organic thing that developed over many years. My dad started skating when he was young, and he just was a dedicated rebel pretty much. He just rebelled against all forms of authority besides his own in many aspects, like most people do, right? And skateboarding was one way for him to express that kind of rebellion into the world. So I grew up in the punk culture, the underground punk scene and skateboarding scene. So I just traveled around the world as I was, in my formative years, and then just went to, see like G.G. Allen, Agnostic Front. He drugged me all over the place, which was hilarious. And then he bought a farm in Ohio, and then he just kind of started building, DIY skate ramps so we could get away from the regulations of the city, the building codes and all this stuff, and just kind of do our own thing and get away from the corruption of government. And then it just kind of, took off on its own, and we built a community, and it kind of got wrapped up with anarchy because he did espouse many anarchist philosophies. He's like libertarian kind of / anarchist. And then, there was a documentary made by that. We were on MTV with Bam. I know Bam personally, and, all that stuff. So we were affiliated with Jackass. I never got involved with the Jackass stuff, though. Like, I thought those guys were just,
Good thing you didn't let an alligator bite your balls.
Yeah, no doubt. And all my friends were always like, like, this is the shit. These are the awesome guys. And I'm sitting back going like, no, there's something wrong with these people. Like, they might be making a bunch of money, but, there's no spiritual prospect here, But it was
there's nothing
spiritual
about getting a tattoo of your own face across your entire back. Thumbs up, like what? Okay.
Yeah. No, not at all. So it was an interesting lifestyle. But my dad instilled in me really libertarian and anarchist principles very early on. Right. Required readings were 1984, A Brave New World, Animal Farm, right? So things like that. He was like, I had to read these before I was in my teens. So he's like, you're reading these to understand the world, and then he'd sit down and help me kind of make use of these. But it wasn't until I came across Mark Passio's work that I kind of put everything together with, all that pre knowledge that I had. Because I read Manly P. Hall when I was like 16. I had the Secret Teachings of All Ages in my dad's library. So, he had some esoteric work there as well. Awesome. And like the Communist Manifesto, he had some Karl Marx there. And so I was really raised in a very unique lifestyle as a homeschool too, so I'm autodidactic. So I was self-taught, self-learned. And so, I stand out against the grain pretty much when it comes to a lot of stuff.
Right.
Very unique.
Well, man, your dad really gave you a foot in front of everybody else. He gave you a much better place to stand on mentally than the rest of us that had to endure public school. It was like 12 years of jail.
Right. And,
that's really great that you had that. And it's also good that you have that community already built. And I know that it's a bunch of people that are fans of Jackass, right?
Yeah.
And they might not be focusing on the mental goals that you have, but at least they agree with anarchy. They agree with self-ownership, most of them, Yep. So even having that community around you is another benefit for your consciousness. Like, you already had a lot of the pieces in your brain before you got to the full understanding. And that's, it's commendable for your dad. And I think that's great that your family did that for you.
Absolutely. It's pretty interesting. I didn't have to go through the type of reprogramming that a lot of people had to. I had my own reprogramming to go through, obviously, because there's so much mind control out there. You can barely escape any of it. But yeah, it was nice, being raised with so many anarchists around me and seeing the different factions of anarchy and the different ideologies. And that's kind of why, I related with Mark so much, because I came from that hardcore background and he came from, Satanism, and there was a lot of satanic influences in the anarchist movements when it comes to just the mini-me satanic ideology, right? Just me personally as the divine authority, I'm the highest of the high. And so it's really interesting. But yeah, there's all kinds of tribulations that I had to go through as well, because it's not all peachy Yeah,
Right.
nobody's life is peachy. But yes, it was great. I definitely had a foot in the door when it comes to these ideologies, which is, why I thank my father all the time for doing that.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Instead of having lies in your head that you got to break down and clear away, you got like the truths that are just disparate and you just got to put them together instead of breaking through the calcified lie that we're all like indoctrinated with. And that's great, man. And so now you are in this community and you're you're working alongside Mark Passio and myself, and now you're taking the reins and you're standing up to the podium. Um, and you've done a lot of work and you've been down the rabbit holes and researching. And this topic of anarchy has been like your main focus, I guess, right?
Yeah, definitely. I've been a deep studier of anarchist literature for a long time, and I feel that a lot of people don't really read into the actual authors of anarchism. We have modern anarchists who just, they're like left-wing anarchists or right-wing anarchists in many ways. Most of them left-wing anarchists, right?
Yeah.
And whenever I ask them, like, hey, have you ever read Lysander Spooner, or have you ever heard of Benjamin Tucker or Josiah Warren? These American anarchists in many aspects. Josiah Warren was one of the first anarchist authors in America, actually. So nobody ever says yes. And I'm like, like, what's going on here? You guys have a discrepancy in knowledge when it comes to what anarchism really stands for. And what I realize is that they kind of just fall into the category of this idea where we have the artificial counterculture that came out of the 60s and 70s, right? And then we have this idea of proto-punk rising up from psychedelic music. And then we have kind of anarchism rising up in the European empire, right? So in Europe, we have like proto-anarchists and proto-punk rising up there. And then what we know from, many, many hours of study and many great researchers, obviously, that most of that stuff was artificially stimulated and injected into the culture, obviously. Right? And so like the Sex Pistols, obviously, they were just grabbed off the streets, and, like
Put them in a costume.
Yeah, put them in a costume. They were like the Backstreet Boys of punk,
right?
Or, whatever, So it's like how much of it is really organic and how much of it isn't always ran through my mind, that question, and we could see that there was a trend of hedonistic endeavors running rampant through the culture at that time, where it was like, yeah, we want peace, but the way that we get peace is just by overdosing on drugs constantly. And, every once in a while, you'll get somebody who's actually standing in front of a tank every once in a while trying to stop the authoritarians. But really, the movement was counter to what they were claiming. It was ostensibly this idea of fighting for freedom. And really what it came down to was just another social engineering psyops. And punk and anarchism kind of got wrapped up in that. And then you have these injections of these other ideologies into anarchism during this time period, like neo-Nazism, right, and postmodernism. So neo-Nazism, the skinhead movement really ran rampant in Europe, in Britain and England and all that, as punk music was starting to come up. And so we have these failures. And the reason why I brought this up is because you ask people, when I grew up in the 90s, like I would ask people, hey, have you read these people? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, how are you really anarchists? They're like, oh, yeah, we read Marx. I'm this. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah. Right. I'm like, what's going on here? So it didn't make any sense that people would claim to be anarchists. But then I realized that it was more about their own selfish endeavor to rule themselves. Like they have this natural spiritual defense to want to rule themselves, right? Yeah. But the thing is that they go so far that they separate from the connection to other people, right? So it's like I can do whatever I want, no matter the consequences, is what it became. So it became chaos after
like G.G. Allen or whatever.
Right, like G.G. Allen, know. When I first saw G.G. Allen, I was absolutely disgusted. And I know, how can you not be? But I know people who like worship him as an idol.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this is what you think anarchism should be? You know, like, and it's this idea of just going to the absolute extreme of being so disorderly and chaotic that you're, and this is what, you know, rebelling against authority is actually all about.
On the pedestal.
Right.
And it's not really, and it's like, instead of rebelling against authority, it's like he's rebelling against all of the social norms
Right.
that are established. And really that's what he's doing, is breaking down the culture.
Yes.
Like you were saying, with the 60s to the 80s, it's like a more refined hammer to smash society with, like I don't think anybody gets higher up on the filth scale than Gigi Allen.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Pinnacle of that. So yeah, it's too bad that these people don't actually, I mean, they were fed a culture, and like this, and the 60s, we all know, was everybody was falling into the, like, they were trained into the self worship and the hedonism. And it seems as though the 80s and the punk scene, well, I guess from the 70s, the late 70s, it was as if they were rebelling against the 60s.
Yes.
They're like,
Yes.
oh, we don't want bell bottoms, and
Yeah.
we're gonna cut our hair all the way off, like the Cro-Mags, dude, or whatever.
Right.
And it's like they say they're rebelling against that, but they're doing the same thing, just in a
Right.
different costume.
Right. Yeah, they become hipsters in costumes. So I always call them the mannequins of freedom, because, you know, you go out to these shows and they're all dressed up and they're styly, right? And they got their style. So it's a stylism, right?
Right.
And they're all just standing there. You know, they're not doing anything. So I'm like, oh, you're mannequins. You're lifeless objects just dressed up by your controllers. You know, you think you came up with this idea on your own, but you really didn't. And you don't even realize that. You know, and I'm not judging people just based off their appearance. I'm just saying that that is rooted in the ideology that's backing those behaviors, you know.
Same thing as in the 80s with the hair metal.
Right.
Had a costume. You know, the people that listen to it wear the costume, and then they focus on their looks. I mean, it's just like a woman, you know, in the mirror going out for the night. You know, she's got to have her makeup on and her foot dressed just right. Same thing. And it's really, it further breaks down, like, and they think that they're being individuals, but really they're conforming to the wider culture. You know, it's really, I'm different because I got this many pins on my jacket.
Right. Right.
You know, when everybody's got pins on their jacket, it's like,
Yeah, everybody's wearing some form of symbols, right? We all do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It helps to identify your ideologies and where you're coming from, and you can support your artists. Like if you want to support your bands that you really enjoy, that's a really good thing, you know, to support local artists and things like that. Nothing wrong with that. But the whole idea about anarchism and punk, because they kind of go hand in hand at this time, right?
yeah, they were sewn together by the creators. Go ahead.
That's right. And you nailed that. Is that you know, it became something antithetical to what it stood for, which was a groupthink ideology. So once it became a trend, then it's like, well, how do you counteract that trend? And then it just multiplies. Like, how do you constantly fight this battle of where it can be corporatized and become a commerce where you can buy your stuff at Hot Topic, right? And you can go buy ripped up jeans and all this stuff rather than actually going out and ripping your jeans by riding dirt bikes or whatever it might be, you know, in the mosh pit, you know? Yeah. So then you get these facsimiles of it, these proxies of that. And we do this all the time. We emulate everything that other people are doing. We copy, you know, and then we build upon those copies, right? So like I copy a lot of my information from great authors and things like that, and I build upon it. So there's nothing wrong with emulating people around you, unless it's actually doing harm to what your goal is, what your purpose is, you know. Right. And I think that's the whole thing, is that people, they don't, especially in the punk and anarchist community, they don't really have a direction. They don't have a purpose. So they end up in an atheistic ideology. They end up going down the path that anarchy means no gods and no rulers, rather than no masters and no slaves, right? And then
That
they're
was
like,
put into their. That was in some of the lyrics of some stuff. That was trained into their mind.
right, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And so the idea is that they rebel against all authority, even the authority of nature, because they hate nature and they hate themselves. That's really
Right.
what it comes down to, you know? I
Right.
mean, it's really apathetic, you know, and it's really sad because you go to these punk scenes, you go to these punk bars or, house parties, right? I've been to so many house parties,
Me too.
Some
Me
of them
too.
are really awesome, some of them are great. You meet some good people. There's like one or two people that are really, really sound, and you can tell, you see it in their eyes, and you talk to them, you hear it in their rhetoric. You're like, oh, yeah, you're the real deal. But then you look around and it's like these people just, they hate society so much, but it's also because they hate themselves and they reflect like some kind of masochism on themselves, right? They want to do self-harm constantly and they laugh at it,
Yeah.
And I mean, we do get some comedy with doing dumb things, and there's nothing wrong with playing the fool card from the tarot, Like you need that card and you need the magician, but they cut off the magician, they cut off the higher self. So it's an interesting thing. But I think a lot of that was, like I was saying, I think a lot of that was part of social engineering programs,
Right.
and we can see how that has affected the culture. And we see like currently we have like Antifa, right, wrapped up in the punk movement and all this stuff and the left wing movement. And it's like you're an anarchist that stands for the opposition of authority, groupthink, and people imposing their will upon you, like censorship, but yet you turn around and support the left wing, right? You're sitting there like supporting, and there's no difference between
They
them.
are a group thing. It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, what happened to you guys? Like back in the 90s, at least you had some form of dissonance towards that. And at least you were like, no, you're staying away from it. But as soon as 2000 hit, it was like down off this cliff.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, what happened? So at that point, I stepped back and I was like, what's really going on here? And that's what led me into studying more about a lot of this stuff. And as I furthered my research, I realized that, if you look at the etymology of anarchism, which I know you've brought up on here many times, it comes from a Greek word, and archon. The absence of is which an is, and then archon is ruler or master, right? There's actually another definition for archon too in the Greek language, which is the 9 magistrates, because it was a statement against the corporatism or, like the magistrates of that time period. And so that's what they meant by archon or authority at that point. So it was standing against the magistrates of Greek, Hellenistic Greek specifically. But the weird thing about the word is that, so we have so we'll get into some roots here actually. So let's take it back. We'll go all the way back here to the root of the word. Is that there's actually no real anarchist philosopher that declared themselves an anarchist in Hellenistic Greece. So if we look at all the great philosophers, Diogenes, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, none of them actually in their writings would declare themselves an anarchist. But this word arose at that point to describe a social condition, a social condition of resisting against some form of authority, specifically the 9 magistrates. So like whenever that would happen, whenever you see somebody resisting the 9 magistrates, they'd be like, oh, anarchy or anarchists, but we do see that in Stoicism, which arose in that time period, that actually espouses a lot of anarchist philosophies, So in Western occultism and in Western philosophy, we see that there is anarchist philosophy being expressed. It's just that there was no literature written on that or published about that at that time period. So we really don't have anything from that period until like 1700 about anarchists, right? It's just like all this kind of like ambiguity of the philosophy, because there's nobody who actually sits down and is like, I am an anarchist and I rebel all forms of authority. We just kind of have this floaty, flimsy philosophy of Stoicism that runs through the Middle Ages and on up, And then in the 1700s is when you start to see actual authors coming out, like Proudhon in Europe and Italy, or which was one of the first anarchists. A lot of people say he is the first, philosopher of anarchism. And then you have, let's say, like Leo Tolstoy, who comes up. He was a Russian. He was a Russian author. He's declared one of the greatest authors of all time, but nobody knows who he is. It's like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? But if you look him up, it's like, oh, this guy was one of the greatest authors of all time and renowned around the world for his teachings and stuff. But he's an anarchist, and you're never taught about him in school,
Right.
So that you see that in the 1700s moving into the 1800s, and then by the time you get to the 1900s, you have a really sound philosophy with people that probably are more commonly known, like Lysander Spooner, yes, Benjamin Tucker, Josiah Warren, people like this, and you have a sound system or formula for like how we could create a stateless society. Because, like, for example, Benjamin Tucker talked about all the economic, issues that we're going to have to face, or security issues, like how do we deal with nations who are not anarchists? What do we do with that? What kind of self-defense that we can have, in place to defend against foreign invaders or even domestic intruders, or domestic invaders? And how can we battle against the status mindset, no matter where it's at, foreign or domestic, So, because that's a big thing that we always get, questioned about, right? Is the functionality of how anarchism will actually work in society. And that should be the last thing you
will build the roads.
Who will build the roads? Right? What will happen if you're invaded?
Right. They always have, and then you have to come up with the answer there. You have to answer them, or else they'll run back to statism. Like,
immediately. It's a fallacy too, because it's kind of like it's like, oh, if you can't give me the answer, like you said, they're just going to be like, well, obviously you don't know. So this is all bullshit.
Right.
It's like, how am I supposed to believe you?
Yeah. But that's a trigger in their head that's placed there.
Right. It is.
From the schooling and all this.
Yeah. So, rather than saying, hey, you don't have that answer, maybe I should go look into it. Right. Like, how do I expect you as a human being who's limited on the capacity of data that you can take in to have all the answers that I need for a whole society, let alone a whole world, to run off that system? It's like you're putting me up on a pedestal as the God, pretty much.
The decider, right?
Yeah. You're making me the authority at that point. Right. It's like, whoa.
But really, all it's based on is principles. Mm-hmm. It's not like where Marx is like, we should do it this way.
Right.
This is like, anarchy is like all these people that you've spoken about, the writers and such, they've stumbled upon this truth. It's not like really a philosophy even. I mean, it's like an understanding of reality. And, I always talk about it like, we do live in anarchy. It is anarchy right now. Mm-hmm. I have free will. You have free will. No one can tell me what to do. They can kill me, but they can't make me pick that cotton. What I mean? Because I own my body and I do. So like, and then people are like, huh? What? And it's like, I tell them like, what you are under mind control right now, which makes you believe that those people can do and all this. And then it goes into that conversation. But like, anarchy is the truth. Really.
It is.
And like, these people, they're clear-minded thinkers that have built on this understanding, because for them, they were given the programming of feudalism or monarchies and stuff. And it took them that many years of building upon each other's work and like stumbling into this, like the thought of the reality was there back in Greece. They didn't have a word for it because no one really thinks about that kind of freedom,
right.
And it evolved into this understanding. And now we have like a firm rock to stand on. Yes, this is the truth. And this is what is reality. And yes, that is mind control. Like all statism, religions, like those are all people managing mind control devices, right?
Yes.
So like it's very interesting that that we, like, it took us this long to get here, and now that we're here, we have to explain away like, oh, this, we can build the roads like this, and I'm going to hire these people, and you can do this or that. And really all it is the principle of I own myself and it's wrong to hurt others. Like those two principles, like everything else sorts itself out. If you go, like if every situation in your life, then you weigh it against those principles and then you choose your actions, right? Instead of like weighing it against like the programming you've had. Oh, I'm allowed to step on this person because the color of his skin, or I'm allowed to because I have this badge or I have this diploma, gives me more rights than you. Like that, that's obviously false. And, but people accept this like caste system of classism, like they just accept it inherently. They've been trained into it. They accept the false authority of, it's like that's what we're trying to break down and dissolve. Like Antifa wants to break the state and smash the windows, but really we got to smash the bars in people's heads. Like that's the real battle.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Brick. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And well said. Very well said. Yeah, I mean, the issue is that, like you're talking about with Antifa, I'll approach that first, is that a lot of people think that, going out and destroying small businesses is actually going to get you some freedom, and it's like, you do realize like you're hurting people's means of living their own lives. Like you're actually becoming the tyrants. And that's what I worry about currently is like, yeah, I believe in the right to protest, right? To be able to go out and stand against any form of system that's corrupt or business or things like this, if it's morally done, right? And that should be something that we never lose track of. But the other thing is like, then we develop lynch mobs, right? And lynch mobs are extremely dangerous because that's actually what creates states, Right. So whatever we do today with what we're trying to create as a better system sets the precedent, sets the bar for what we're going to build from, right? So if we're setting the bar with lynch mobs where there's no investigation into any forms of like violent crimes, and we're just like, oh, this person said he did this, or they said he did this, and we just go out and lynch them. We don't have any empirical evidence. We didn't see it actually happen. Like there's all kinds of stuff. So I don't believe in the lack of like investigative methods for being able to come to a truth, because I use that all the time to come to a truth about all these philosophies, Right. I mean, that's what we do. We're investigators, we investigate every aspect of all the details that we can find, all the information we can find. But the other thing I wanted to say is like all that stuff about building roads, that should be the last thing that you think about. The first thing that comes is whether it's moral or not, right? Whether it's true or not, and then whether it's moral or not, right? And then you build upon that. So because all of our actions determine whether we're going to create freedom or not. Every action we take is either an action that's going to express freedom or diminish and, destroy freedom. So that's the thing. And that's why I think that's why those great authors and philosophers and, just literary artists in the past kind of came to those realizations. And obviously they didn't limit themselves. They're like, okay, I got the ethics, I got the morality now. Now I'm going to start to figure out like how this can function so that we can apply this and I can leave this information for posterity and progeny so that the children can really have something to work with in the future. And we can actually empirically show like, hey, statism has always been corrupt. Government by de facto is slavery. And no matter what changes you make in that system, it's always going to be the iron fist coming down on your liberties. So pretty much man wants to be the lawmaker. He wants to declare that he is the lawmaker of all laws in the universe. And that's what laws really are, is that we're declaring that we are the creator, the creative force in the universe, the highest of high. And we're saying we get to make those rules and everybody else has to obey them. And then it kind of goes into the divine right of kings and all that stuff where like who actually is the highest of high in mankind, who gets appointed that position through like a religious ceremony from God himself or itself, right? So, and what bloodline makes you, you know, it's social Darwinism, right?
Right.
And then that kind of trickles down and it just becomes like, because the bloodline thing doesn't really matter as much anymore. Now, I mean, obviously there's really dark occult bloodlines that are still in control. And we know that. But we also see power struggles between those who just rise up and trying to fight that as well. So there's always a power struggle between those at the top and then those underneath that are all fighting with each other. You know, but that's all part of it. It's all part of the dialectic. And it's always worked that way. And that's kind of what I wanted to point out earlier is that we're suffering from a problem that's been going on for tens of thousands of years, you know, and anarchism or stoicism or whatever you want to point at it as, right, arose in a time period where like democracy was arising, right, in Hellenistic Greece. And we see now that democracy is nothing but mob rule, you know, and it's mob rule by the most inept and ignorant, you know,
Right.
and it's that lynch mobbian idea, right? So,
Right.
and,
That's what made the Holocaust. Like that's
right,
what made, you know, the Mao's China. Like it's total mind control.
right, right. And the other thing about the lynch mob thing is that they also forced all the knowledge out of the temples and destroyed the temples and burned the libraries and all this stuff, right? So when we have that kind of system of rebellion and authority battling against each other, we have to understand that what we set as the rebels can be very dangerous, because if it gets out of control with the groupthink, we're going to end up destroying all the knowledge that we need, which is what happened, and all of its detritus of what it used to be. All the ancient, you know, symbolic forms and all the ancient literature, we're just like picking up the pieces from it. And now the authorities can rewrite it all, you know, because now it's all ambiguous and it's all gone. So since they're in the position of power, they can be like, oh, we can just write history how we want it, because not only are we the victors, but also these idiots came and destroyed it all. You know, they came and burned down all the temples and, you know, destroyed all their own, you know, pathways to their own salvation and their own freedom. So we'll just put them back in serfdom, you know, put them back in you know, slavery, obviously, really simple. So it's that power differential of knowledge that's been a huge issue. And that's why occultism has always been an issue to a big degree, because they keep the knowledge away from us.
That's right. And I mean, that is evident with Antifa. Those people they don't know. You know, they don't know reality. They think they're anarchists, you know?
Yes.
They wear the symbols and it works to like destroy our movement of actual freedom, because they're a bunch of rabble rousers that get all the attention and they make all the noise and break stuff. And then it's a way that the power can destroy the true rebels by giving these fake rebels out there to like lead the charge. And, you know, Antifa is much more dedicated at hurting and making actions than I am. Like I'll make a podcast, you know, I'll sit down and talk with somebody. Those guys will like get a knife and go out on the streets, you know, smash somebody with a wrench on the head and like give them stitches. Like it's really, you know, and the self-hatred that you talked about before is a tool. I think that like they give us this reality of Satanism, like everything that they feed us is the satanic world of just filth and decay. And, you know, we grow up with, you know, narcissistic parents that are divorcing each other, and like they are in a decay state, and like you look out at society is all decay and disgusting, and then you look in the mirror and like all you've been taught is like, you know, you're gross and you're killing the world by living and like, you know, breathe carbon and whatever. Like you breathe, like, so I mean, then we apply that hatred to ourselves as well. And like I had that when I grew up, I became Satanist. I hated the world. I hated everything. I wanted to tear it all down, and like I hated myself. And I mean, I like to say that I've gotten better, but like I've grown, and it's like a process. But I think that is a reaction. Like I grew up Catholic. I grew up, in a divorced family. I think that because of the society that they're giving us, people react and they want to be Gigi Allen, to be the opposite of their dumbass parents and their evil society. But the society lays that out for them. The society says, you can be Gigi Allen,
Right.
like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Like, just like they used to, I want to be Jim Morrison or whatever. It's like, and now like we're past Gigi Allen. I mean, I guess nobody's like cutting themselves and smearing shit in the cuts like on stage. But
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
don't really see that too much anymore. But, yeah.
I mean, but you do get the Satanism, and like, it's on the Grammys, sponsored by Pfizer. Like it's
Right. Right.
and it like that too is a filth that they're smushing in our face, and it's
Right.
and that makes us hate ourselves in the world. And it's like it's kind of the same effect as like what Cannibal Corpse used to do. And it's like, but now it's the main culture driving the main pop music and all this. And so I think that the kids now are gonna grow up to hate, and they're not gonna want to have, like they were forced to wear masks. Their parents are all dumbasses, like injecting them with jabs and snipping their penises, and like they're gonna, I think that like this 2030 time is gonna be like a real clash of powers. I think that people are gonna be fed up, and they're gonna want to go out in the streets and be a Gigi Allen Antifa, and the rest of us with heads on our shoulders are gonna have to defend ourselves from,
Right.
and these people, they think they're commies. They're like an anarcho-commie, and they think that they need the anarchy to crush the system so that they can have their communist utopia after.
Right.
And like, speak about that a little. What do you think about that? The anarcho-communists, like the anarchy is just the sledgehammer for them so that they can plant it's more statism, collectivism in the future.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's a big dilemma, right? Because I always call myself an anarchist without adjectives, because I feel like as soon as you put an adjective on it, you've already lost the fundamental principles of it.
Right.
So if you say anarcho-capitalist, anarcho-communist, anarcho-socialist, anarcho-syndicist, there's all kinds of them, right? There's all kinds of them nowadays. And they're all fighting with each other, but they have some roots of like some truth in there. So it's interesting to me, because it's like, oh, you kind of understand, but then you're just like really seeking power. You're just really thirsty and greedy for power. And what you want to do is that you don't really want to destroy the system. You want to replace the system with your own form of authority, So you want to be the ones that are in control of everything, and that's what that really comes down to. And I think, to relate with you, I was a Satanist at a really low level back in the day. I never joined, the Church of Satan or anything, but yeah, absolutely. I think we always have a natural instinct to rebel against all kinds of stuff. And let's just, side topic here. Like we did live in a statist society, right? I think that there will be children who rebel against that stateless society, because rebellion is natural, but it's how you deal with that and how you educate your children that will determine like whether that's going to be productive or not, because rebellion always brings about great change and great growth if it's used properly. All the great thinkers of the entire history of the world have been rebels of some sort, rebelling against all kinds of stuff, right? Those are the ones who have always created the growth in society. But yeah, the anarcho-communist thing, and I've run into a lot of those people, a lot of them. It's insane how many there are. I think it's really dangerous because, first of all, I don't think they understand their ideology that they're espousing. And I think that they really, are more communist than anarchists because they don't believe in private property, And from what I've seen, being in the anarchist and punk underground movements, they don't respect your stuff. They don't respect themselves. So how can I expect them to build something that's stable for me and my family? You know, how can I do that? How can I put my faith in people who do not respect themselves or respect me and my principles and my property? You know, so like I think that's a big issue. Like if you want to say we want to have a commune where we're rebelling against the system, we have a decentralized trading method, you know, and we're working together, we're growing our own food and we share our food and stuff like this. It's fine until you get to the point where people are demanding you to do that without volunteerism, and they're using forms of moral relativity like coercion to say you have to do this because you're in this geographical region, you know. And I think that in small pockets it might function for a time period, right? Just like for a minute. But as soon as you escalate that and expand it into bigger groups of people, it's going to collapse, you know, because no matter what, you might have 10 people that are all in the same ideology in that circle, and they're all agreeing to that, right? But as soon as you get 150 people, well, one of those people are going to be like, no, I'm not dealing with that, you know, like, you're trespassing on my property, you know, you're coming in my house and taking my food, you know, like this is my garden I put in my front yard. You're taking food out of my garden, which is taking food from my children, you know, and I'm trying to do something separate, more individual rather than everything else. And I get to freely choose where I put my labor and my resources in the community, you know, and I think that's a big issue when it comes to anarcho-communism, besides the whole violence thing, you know, with the Antifa movement. So, and I have people that used to be in my band that are Antifa, you know, and I tell them about how, you know, it was funded by like George Soros and just, you know, how it was just artificially stimulated in society, and how they become actually fascists, which is what they're fighting against, you know. And it's like, you don't even see this, like, what, you know, how can you support something like this? And that's why I don't like getting into labels. Like, I do call myself an anarchist, but it's like, it doesn't really matter what term you put on it. What matters is the result, you know, like you can call it anarchy, you can call it freedom, you can call it sovereignty. I don't care, as long as I'm not being coerced by authority figures, you know. And I really like what you said earlier, to go way back, about that we already are living in anarchy, right? I've always stated that nature is in a natural state of anarchism. You know, one grain of grass doesn't own the other grain of grass, right? And there may be like a form of competition there between one plant and another for like resources at some point. But anarchy doesn't mean the absence of competition when it comes to like social interactions, you know. There's some competition that's good and some competition that's bad. We just have to discern, you know, which one's good and which one's bad. And sometimes that can get hard, but I think competition is a great motivator. You know, I compete with myself all the time in many aspects. And that's what monopolies do, right? They limit competition in the market. Totally. So, you know, they don't want you to have any means to compete with them. And that's why we have things like patents, right? Where these big corporations can spend all this money and buy up these ideas really quick and really easy. And then the little man doesn't have any opportunity to compete in the market for these ideas because they already got a patent on it. They own it, you know. And we know how many people are poor in the world. You got to pay $20,000 for a 4 or 5 year patent on something. It's like, dude, I can barely pay my own bills sometimes, you know. It's like, come on, how am I supposed to do anything with my ideas? So they can buy it up like that, and then bam, you're out of the market, you know. So I think free trade is a really important thing when it comes to these philosophies, and understanding that, you know, no centralization of any form of authoritarian power for people transacting with each other, whether that's for resources or just for social encounters, you know, because that's what the military is and the police forces are. It's a monopoly on force, right? It's a monopoly on violence, and you don't have any other options, you know. And it's like, oh, you know, if I'm an old lady in a wheelchair and I don't have another option to protect myself from other forms of violence that are coming down upon me, what do? Well, then I go to the state because that's the only option I have. So we have to have other options for these people, because you can't delegate a wrong, right? But you can delegate a right. So you can give somebody else an ability that is correct to do for you. So if I'm an old lady in a wheelchair, I need self-defense. I can, if I want, hire somebody to defend me. That is my right to do so, because I can't do it myself physically, so I can delegate that to somebody else and say, hey, I need help. And if you want to pay for it, fine. I'd rather just it be voluntary, because it's a moral obligation. Obviously, it's an old lady in a wheelchair, but whatever gets it done at that point, So,
but it's still voluntary for the old lady to choose who's going to do it.
right.
Can't make it so the cops are always the one, because the cops are, like, it's been proven in court, it's not their duty to protect us.
Right.
And, like, they're allowed to shoot us and whatever. So relying on the enemy to protect you is always a bad idea.
Yeah. It's like going to the mafia after they rough you up and you're like, please stop roughing me up. And they're like, well, you have to meet all these demands for us, and then we'll stop sending our thugs to your business to steal your money,
Yeah, it's exactly that.
It's exactly the mafia,
And they give us the TV and the movies to make us think certain things, so they don't even have to rough us up, really,
Right. Like, I always say we go through 3 phases. We go through fear, and then we go through what's the other one? I just thought of it earlier. It's fear, and then anger, and then empowerment, right? So we're scared. This is where most people are stuck. They get so scared. They get one letter from the government saying, like, if you don't file this right paperwork, then you're going to be in contempt of this, and we're going to put you, this is fraudulent behavior, whatever, right? And we're going to fine you $50,000 or send you to prison and take your kids away from you, right? And so that's fear. So they immediately go out and file all this paperwork after they beat themselves up because maybe they forgot to do it correctly, and they beat themselves down. And then people get angry. And when you get angry, that's a really good motivator to do something about it. But then a lot of people get stuck there because they don't become empowered to actually create any change. They just fester that unnecessary anger about everything, and they project it on everything else and everybody else around them, rather than dealing with it on the inside, right? And fixing the psychology and integrating the shadow self, right? That's a really important thing that we have to do. And that kind of goes in with what we're talking about with the anarchist movement, because I feel like that they're angry. They see the problem. They're not scared, I can't say these people are scared, but I can say they're angry, and they direct their anger at themselves or at other people that don't deserve it, So they're angry, but they're not truly empowered, which is finding the real solution, getting in tune with the soul, and then applying that solution into physical manifestation and becoming activated.
Yeah, like they're so angry they even hate God. No gods, no master. Like, and then in so doing, they hate themselves too. They hate the creator. They hate having been created. And that's right where Satanism wants you. Like, that's self-loathing, nihilism, and then they can just say, "Oh, well, the only thing that matters is sense pleasure," and go step on your neighbors, and go take what you want because it's a dog eat dog world. And and then it creates a Satanism in society, creates all the chaos, so that we plead, "Oh, government, save us from our crazy neighbors."
Right.
It's a big trap. It's a trap.
It is a trap.
And I like the empowerment thing, because, like, the empowerment stage, you got to listen and look at what really, like, if you go out in the streets and yell, that's not much empowerment there. And, like, the state told you, "Oh, if you're mad about us, go out in the streets and yell with a cardboard sign."
Right.
Really, like, what it takes is to get empowered in your own self, to do it yourself without the government. Start an agorist community with your neighbors, like, actually grow things of value out of the ground,
Right.
instead of like going and asking for a boss to like, you know, give you money, you know, it's a totally different dynamic, and that's where we need to be. There's a lot of great anarchists in the movement that are working for that. The Greater Reset is like run by John Bush and Derek Bros. They're thinking out of the box, trying to help people to connect with themselves, with others like them. Start, you know, because that's really, I find that's the only solution for getting free. You can't ask them, "Hey, give me freedom," because that right there is you are condoning their ownership of you. Like when we vote or something, we say, "Okay, that person gets to own me now." You know?
Yeah, it's
And
a validation.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
also makes us like stand down and like, "Oh, well, I'm mad at my government, but well, it's what I get because I voted for it." So, you know, it's a mind control device to us. Like
Right.
just going to the place and checking the box makes us like condone all of the bad stuff. You know, it's like our agreement. Um, So, but anyway, like we need to be on a different, we need to think in a totally different way in order to be empowered. Because if we're just going to do what they tell us, like go in the streets and yell, go break some windows at Starbucks, go read some Karl Marx or something,
Right.
you know, we're just going to fall right into their trap, and they're going to use us as the sledgehammer to get what they want. And it's going to be more statism in the end. It's going to be more compliance with authority. I think really that's where we're at right now.
I
guess
agree with you.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where we're at, and I like what Derek Bros is doing. I've always enjoyed his work. He does amazing work out in the community. He's really interactive with people, which is what we need more, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think a hot revolution is the solution. I think a hot revolution would end up right back where we're at. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, which is like we set the precedent for where we're going to be. And the realism of it is how many people in this hot revolution, right? Or resolution. But how many of these people actually understand natural law or, you know, objective morality or objective truth, you know? And at some point, if your militia is so small that you have to compromise on like filtration where people are coming in, be like, oh, this is a prerequisite for you to be part of the militia, being the understanding of objective truth, morality, and natural law. Well, then, you know, you need sympathy from other people. So you're going to try to gain sympathy from people who do not have those principles because you don't have the manpower or the resources or the right amount of people to actually fight against this, right? So it's not going to work because I don't think realistically we have those kind of numbers.
Can't compromise the principles to get more numbers, right?
Yeah, we're going to compromise principles. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, really what you need to do, what everybody needs to do is take care of their own family. You know, you don't need to group up, like know your neighbors and stuff. But, you know, the idea of being in a group is giving your will to the collective.
Right.
You know, it's always bad. Like, even if you're doing good, whatever, like if your will is the same as your neighbor and you're going out and doing it together, then that's cool. But if you're like, well, I have to join this group in order to protect, and I have to pay these dues and I have to be there every Tuesday, and they, you know, whatever, I don't know what the fuck. But
right.
you know, it's if we all take care of our family, then everybody will be protected because we all got a family. You know, like we like, again, we're trapped in the mindset of collectivism, even when we're trying to think of a solution for it, you know. And people, like, they fall into the traps of, like, you know, those people in Michigan or whatever that were led by the FBI to fall into this trap of like trying to, in quotes, kidnap the governor or whatever. There was like 11 FBI agents and like 2 regular people. And those people just fell into the snare, just because they wanted to be part of the group, because they thought that they needed to be in order to make a change. And that group was controlled by the bad guys. The FBI led them to bad things, and they didn't have a moral compass. They weren't like, no, I'm not going to kidnap somebody.
Right. Yeah.
If I mean, we're total tools for them until we recognize moral objectivity and self-ownership. I think that, that's why Passio rails so heavily on the natural law stuff, because that's the opposite of Satanism. He's working towards the real solution, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that that's the only way that I was able to get control of my life, is to act morally and with principles and with the understanding that I own myself. Like, now I can control things. Now I feel like I'm a good dad, and I'm like, being a worthy person. Like, when you start doing the actions, then you get the self-respect, and you get the, people, because they're not living morally, they're also led into the self-hatred. I think because subconsciously they know they're evil and they're doing bad or whatever, harming others, and it still tears you down, even if you don't know it. And, you go try to do more drugs, or try to wear more patches, or do more flips on the skateboard or whatever, but it doesn't go away. And it's
Right.
It's a constant hook dragging you down into this immoral Satanism. And like you said, you had, being in that skater community, do you see that self-hatred was the main problem with these kids?
I think it's definitely a huge problem. I think they don't really have a moral compass. They don't really have a good strengthened conscience because of parental abandonment issues, or, some type of social trauma, social dynamic trauma, or just, trauma-based mind control in general, right? So yeah, I do think that's a huge issue, is self-loathing, and then apathy. I think they don't care. Right. So they just don't care about anything. So they don't have any purpose. And that's kind of what got me into studying philosophy, was because obviously philosophy has a huge issue, right? Because it doesn't actually get you to apply anything unless you're really living through what you found to be objectively true. But I think that without, having some firm basis in things like epistemology, you won't be able to compete with the scholars or the academics of the world. Like, you're just going to sound like a complete idiot. If you try to convince a scholar who's been studying philosophy for 30 years of anarchism, they're going to be like, well, what about all this stuff? And they'll bring up all these gray areas where they'll try to, break down your arguments, right?
Sophist tricks.
Right, absolutely. And I've debated a lot of people like this. So I had to strengthen my ability. And so I ended up studying a lot of philosophy, which is like the four branches of philosophy is epistemology, and then you have ethics and logic and metaphysics, So you have those four. Those are the basic four. And then you have other things like axiology, ontology, a bunch of other stuff. But you get those four down, then you're good. Like, if you get your epistemology down, then you can combat the psychological illness of solipsism, because you figure out that there is such a thing as truth and that you're not here alone. So it's a justification for knowledge itself. Like, how can you justify what knowledge actually is if it's useful, that you can actually share it, things like this, right? And then from there, you can get your logic in order, which kind of applies with, all these interconnect. So you can't have one without the others, obviously. But then you get your ethics, right? After you get your logic, which is being able to critically think, problem recognize, problem solve, use scientific methodologies, use the trivium, especially. Then you get your ethics, you know, you get your morality, you apply the knowledge into society. So you can say like, hey, these behaviors are objectively wrong. And if you ask anybody, for example, about a universal that's really inherent, which is like, is rape, you know, universally wrong? Everybody will say yes in most cases. You know, you're very rarely going to find someone to say no to that. But then they'll turn around and be like, oh, but culture makes up morality, or, you know, whatever you were taught in your culture or your geographical location determines that. And it's like, well, you just contradicted yourself, you know, because you're saying that rape is not acceptable across the universe. It's a universal wrong no matter where you go. You know, if my sister goes to Pluto and there's some alien there that rapes her, it's wrong no matter what, even if their culture accepts it, you know. And then you get metaphysics, right? And metaphysics is the big one, which talks about, you know, things that are non-physical, you know. So it talks about the godly aspects of everything, which can really combat the atheism. You know, so I think that we're not taught any of these things, and they wait intentionally to teach you about these things until college, if you even go into that realm, so that you do not have the tools at hand to be able to critically think about stuff, because these things teach you how to think rather than what to think. And that's what we're brought up in these indoctrination camps to do, right? We're taught what to think, not how to think about these things. So that's the biggest issue I see. So yeah, in the punk community, it's just rampant. And you know, skater community, it's just rampant hedonism and apathy to a big extent. And then when I started to say, like, you know, skating isn't, or what I said was, you're not going to skate your way into freedom. People got so mad at me about it, because it is their expression of freedom. You know, that's like, this is how I'm expressing my freedom away from authority. Hell yeah, good for you. But you're not going to be able to actually effectively bring about more freedom for everybody, holistic freedom, you know, for yourself. It's like, I'm going to play my guitar in the freedom, you know?
Right. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, there's a South Park episode where like the hippies make this hippie festival for like freedom or whatever, and then they just jam, just constantly on their guitar, and they're all just standing around like, woo, we're fighting.
When's it gonna happen?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just endless jamming and hanging out, and drunk, and yeah, that was very. So the thing is that if the people aren't given the moral objectivism when they're told rape is bad, but then when culture changes, that can change too. You know, they don't have that foundation of actual ethics and morality. You know, like now they're changing culture. You know, they have been over the years, like ever since Kinsey. Like now it's cool to bestiality is cool. Like, you know, carnism is next, or not, well, that too, but I mean, like cannibalism is next.
Right.
Like, they're changing it slowly. The Overton window moves along, and, you know, now it's okay to do whatever happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. And now it's okay to like divorce your family, and it's okay to kill your babies. Like, you know, it's slowly being satanified. I mean, the Satanic Temple just opened their first religious abortion clinic.
It doesn't surprise me, but that's just crazy that we live in a world like that, you know?
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
horrible.
and they say it's their, that is their ceremonial, that's their ceremony is to abort babies.
Yeah, they're
For
bloodletting sacrifices, right?
yeah. They say that, and they invite women to do that, and it's, I mean, at least they're being honest about it. Whereas Planned Parenthood, like saying we're helping your family, like
Right.
sterilize the woman as they're doing it. You know, it's I mean, it's an attack. But it's they're putting it. So I mean, if they don't teach us how to think or the moral relativism in the beginning, then they can just push all this stuff in later. They can just change the culture. And we know that they create the culture. Like, we saw the 60s, and the punk movement too was part of that. The lead singer, the Cro-Mags, that guy was diddled by Allen Ginsberg when he was a kid.
Right.
He was that milieu of the 60s counterculture that was destroying people. And, and then they put him out there, and then they had this thing, and he's got this, anger stage, and they're doing that, and people get attracted to that because everybody's angry at society. And, it's really, it's all traps. It's so many traps.
Yeah, groupthink is extremely dangerous, because you have to appeal to the group for morality, which there can never be conscience in a group. Only an individual has conscience.
Right.
And with all the fundamental issues with multiple individuals coming together to express their conscience, they all overlap way too much, especially when you have moral relativism backing that conscience. So it's like, oh, okay, so who do we go to? We go to an authority figure in the group who happens to be the most popular, maybe the most well-spoken or the most assertive or the most aesthetically handsome or beautiful or whatever it might be, right? We look for these superficial characteristics to be like, hey, I'm going to follow this guy, and then everybody follows that. Yeah, I have a big issue with the punk community as well, because you got people like Jello Biafra, right?
Oh,
and I had Jello Biafra play at my 27th birthday at my house, which was wild. And then
yes.
a few years later, I see him running around with a Democratic shirt on, support democracy, and then I am a Democrat, and I'm like, what happened to you, dude?
Now he's got the What Would Jello Do, the podcast, right. And he took the jab on camera.
Mm-hmm.
And he told people that we gotta wear a mask and stuff. And then he said, that song Nazi punks F off.
Yeah.
He did that again, but he calls it Nazi Trumps, Nazi Trumps, Nazi Trumps.
Right.
And I went to see him speak. He did spoken word for a long time, and I went to see him speak. He was it was after the Columbine thing, and he was selling T-shirts that had the Nazi flag, and it said "Vote Republican." I was like, "What
the hell,
dude?" He was just hating on Republicans. It's really like that. He was doing it then, and he just now he's taking the jab. He works for them. He's it's like he pulled the mask. In the beginning, he was set up as the rebel. Look at him. He's fighting Tipper Gore. He's putting images of Christ in his record, and he's fighting the powers that be or whatever. And he would talk about you rich kids need a holiday in Cambodia to know what real communism is but now it's this totally the other direction, and it's very sick. And a lot of the punks from Patti Smith took the jab on camera, a lot of them, I can't think of all the names right now, but there was a list of these rebels that are just totally slaves to the state, and they're just leading us to the slaughter. Yeah, I mean, it's cool that he played your show and that he was there at Skatopia, and but it's too bad that I mean, he's singing these real songs, Holiday in Cambodia, but then he's gets off the stage. I went and I saw him play. I saw the Melvins in San Francisco, and they did Eggnog, Lysol, the full album together. And Jello was there in the crowd, and he had this baby blue tuxedo with the ducktail thing on it there, And we were getting picture with him and hey, and he was asking us about who we're gonna vote for. And he's telling people what to vote for in the crowd at a Melvin show. It's dude, come on.
Yeah, dude.
Back then I was wow, that dude sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was it was really weird, the interaction that I had with him at my birthday, and it kind of turned me off from him after he played, because he played Jello Biafra. He didn't play Dead Kennedys at that point, right? So after I like talked to him, I was like, this guy seems like just a fake person. Like he just doesn't seem like he's actually embodying what he's talking about in his music to the degree that I would expect somebody like him would. But we see that all over the place. Like I used to be a big fan of Rage Against the Machine, and then later I'm like,
Yeah,
you guys are raging against the machine. Like, what's going on here? Like, you guys are liberals now, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, what happened to you? But so we can talk about that a little bit. Like, so we have, we have the liberal concept, right? Which is kind of non-orthodox, and then we have the conservative, right? Which is orthodox, by the book. So it makes sense that the punk community is like not by the book, right? Because they're like, oh, we're so open.
Unless it's Karl Marx's book. But
yeah, no, that's a good point. Hey, that's a good point. A good point, actually. Yeah. I'm gonna have to use that. I'm gonna say something like that to somebody that I know. But yeah, so it's like non-orthodox, So it's like fight against all the Western traditions, right? Stable monogamous marriages, having a family, all this stuff, right? Just all the traditions.
Family like takes away power from the state. That's why Mao wanted to take the kids away and train them in the other, so they didn't bond with their parents. And it was a total attack on that because the family unit is the main power of society, and if they can usurp that into the state, so that's the goal. But go ahead.
No, that's right. That's well said. That's kind of like what the one of the main tenets of the Black Lives Matter movement was destroy the Western family dynamic. And you can go right to the creator's page of Black Lives Matter, and he's like, this is what we want. And one of them, like in the top 5, was like, destroy the Western family dynamic, So
so then gangs will run rampant and statism. Right. Okay.
Yeah. It was such a great idea, And it's funny because in the Black community, the reason why there's so much crime is not because they're Black. It's because they have single mother homes, Right. It's because they come from broken families and they're poor, It's because of the government. Right.
And they give the mother more money if the dad is gone.
That's right. They give the mother more money. So that's incentivized. So the females are definitely like incentivized to break the family down, get a divorce, get half the resources. They get all kinds of government programs that can support them and all these
free housing.
Free housing. Yep. And then the men are obviously the enemy, especially white, Caucasian, men, especially masculine men.
Cops out there to gather them all up, and then we'll make money from the taxpayer by putting them in this cage over here and charge $75,000 a year just to keep him in a cage.
Right.
Then we'll charge the taxpayer to pay for his wife and his family. So really that's communism right there. Like everybody has to pay for everybody else, by way of
I told this to a girl I knew one time. I said, okay, because we were talking about abortion, right? And you brought up abortion. And I was like, okay, so you want to have the choice to abort a living sentient being, well, where's your equality in this? Because you're going to turn around and force the dad to pay for the finances of that baby if you do have the baby, right? So can a father abort the financial strain that they have? Can they just say, can I choose not to, I don't want to be engaged in the finances at all. Can they have that choice? Oh no, you can't have that kind of equality, but the women get all the choices when it comes to abortion. So it's kind of like this weird double standard they have. And she shut up really quick, after that. And I'm not in support of the abortion, but I like to try to twist things like, hey, you're for equality. Are you for equality for men too? Where can we find equality when it comes to choices for children? Do I have a choice? Right. Do I have a choice to keep the baby or not? Can I have that choice, or is all the power in the female, And if I don't have that choice, what choices do I have as a man when it comes to that kind of system?
Right. Well, we don't have, and ultimately the mother isn't having a proper choice either, because she doesn't understand. She's trained into thinking that it's empowering to kill her own bloodline. Future of their family tree is being culled because of this mind control. And the kid, there's also equality. But the child is is a soul in a body, and they can't speak for himself. And who speaks for that? My body, my choice. But the child has a body.
Mm-hmm.
It
Right.
was given to him by the creator, by the parents for creating him.
Right.
So it's like there is no right to kill another one. You know what I mean? The baby didn't harm you. It's just like growing. That's all. Like,
Yeah, it's despicable. They look at it as a parasite. They have put it in medical journals as a parasite too. Now they've rewritten medical journals to make it say it's a parasite, and it's like, whoa.
John Paul, I've heard him talk about when he was in medical school, they were telling people to call it a fetus, not a baby.
Right.
They were changing the words back then, and he spoke about how like that changes our mindset, and he saw like what, in medical school, they, aborted this baby and it was still alive, and it was like in the bin, and they were not paying attention to it. They're just like, and that really shook him, and he grew up to deliver many babies, like in his career. And, I still have a lot of respect for that dude. But, people need to recognize it is a baby, even though it's like microscopic. And like, if we had principles and moral objectivity, then we wouldn't be able to, justify, oh, well, it's my right to do so. Like, oh, well, do you have the right to kill him when he's 12? And,
Yeah, they say it's
like
a bundle of cells, right? They call it a bundle of cells. And it's like, I'm a bundle of cells. Does that mean it applies to me? Oh, no, it's inside the womb, so it's fine. And it's like,
well, then when
the location determines it. It's like, how does the location change the moral factor?
Now, when you have a monetary value on the parts, because you can sell the parts, and then if the head is still in the vaginal canal and it's not born yet, so they birth them backwards, full term, so they have a full baby's worth of parts, and then they stab it in the back of the head with scissors and scramble the brain while it's still in the mother.
Yeah.
So it's still abortion. Like Hillary Clinton wants that for us. Like a lot of the Democrats think that's okay. And I mean, that's way more horrific than anything that they could do to us as an adult. Like that's like the worst kind of death I can imagine. And so and that's happening. Like once they do that, then they sell the muscles, they sell the organs, the whatever,
Yeah. It's a cyberpunk dystopia world where body parts are sold off as, commodities, right? It's super horrible. And we have so many movies. It's interesting because you bring up movies a lot, and I'm a huge movie buff. Excuse me, but I'm a huge movie buff. And I've always been interested in sci-fi movies, especially things like Equilibrium, Blade Runner. Movies like this really intrigue me.
You can do anything with sci-fi. You can just create any scenario, right?
Absolutely. And I think that there are a lot of, fragments of truth in it. And it's like you have predictive programming, obviously, in there where they're like, hey, we're going to tell you what we're doing, obviously, before we do it. But then there's other aspects of like subversion of that within many fields of cinema where people are actually trying to inject, these ideologies and be like, this is what they're doing. Like Eyes Wide Shut is a good example of like, hey, this is what they're doing. And that's why I think Kubrick was actually killed, and murdered because of that movie. And there's a big thing around that. And I know you talked a little bit about that.
I agree with that. So
I think it's so true. And they took out like 20 minutes of the movie or something. They took a lot of it out.
That's the rumor. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know if I can prove that because all the people
I haven't been able to prove it.
Like John and all the like his coworkers and all, they all say they actually added the opening thing with her between the pillars and dropping her dress. They added that at the very beginning after he was gone. But I agree, and there's a lot more other there's directors now which are revealing more. There's a new director named Ari Aster who
Yeah.
did Midsommar and Hereditary,
Yes.
and that has a lot of truth in it. And that, you know, the Midsommar talks about groupthink, cult mentality, and how they can assimilate violence into their loving ethics. It's really it's an interesting piece about like what humans can do, what their minds are capable of. They can accept death and murder and like these sacrifice rituals because, you know, and they're trained in, and it's the same as the ancient paganism. So it's very telling because you know, the occult powers that be are performing the same ancient paganism. Like Eyes Wide Shut had the Star of Ishtar, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a fertility ritual. You know, it's the same basic idea, and they're revealing it like that it is the same old religion that's always been there, you know. And you know, I think that there's, you know, I think there some directors are like, because I think that we want to express ourselves as human artists, you know, and so they want to put it in there. They want to, you know, show the symbols so that the other people that have the knowledge will see it, and they can you know, see how they can, you know, remark on how great of a piece of work it is. um I think that that's part of it. I'm actually I think at the end of the week I'm going to have Leah Boone on Wake the Dead here, and we're going to talk about
Oh,
the Dark Shine. Yeah, I'm very psyched too. I'm psyched.
yeah. I like her.
She did some work on Dark Shine, which is like the Satanists revealing their Satanism on purpose, and like what it does for the power, and like how it feeds their ego, and like it's we're going to get into that, and like I think that has something to do with it too. So there are a lot of reasons why they put it in the culture, and if we can wake up and see the symbols, you know, and if we have principles, then we won't fall into the trap. If we have morality, we won't fall into that. Oh, well, that's a powerful thing for me. I think I'll do that also, and like be Satanist too, you know, like fall into that because they want us to be Satanists too, to like
Right.
work for their power structure and their
It gets
hierarchical structure.
romanticized. Yeah. It gets romanticized a lot. I like what you're saying there. That's cool that Leah's coming on. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm very
Really
excited.
awesome. She's such a good person. I'll be interested in watching that. But you brought up Midsommar, and man, that movie is so good. You know, because at the beginning you have the girlfriend who goes through the traumatic death of her sister, the suicide death, right? And that's kind of how they get you, right? They traumatize you from something, or you just have some natural trauma that happens, and it opens up your mind to be influenced in many ways. And then the next stage is the psychedelic, you know, the psychedelic influences. And then, you know, from the psychedelic influences, you really are even more open after you've been traumatized. Now you do these psychedelics, and it's like you're just a blank slate for whatever sorcerer that comes in and puts their own program into you. And I like what you said about paganism, because I have a huge issue with neo-paganism and even old paganism. And I see a lot of people falling into it. And I feel that you know, it's very romanticized too. And I understand like they're trying to be naturalistic, you know, but I also see that there's a lot of versions of it that are very toxic and very not for what we're actually standing for, you know. So somebody may argue, well, that's the perverted versions of it, and okay, you know, I can get behind that if you want to call that. But from my research into it, it seems like that's kind of been the case for since it's you know, the beginning of it. So I like what you that you brought that up, because I don't hear anybody ever saying that, you know, anybody else bringing that up. But yeah,
Well, the ancient paganism sacrificed babies, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's Parenthood is sacrificing babies, and
right.
Temple is sacrificing babies. So it's like, what, same old guys, you know what I mean? And they justify their immorality with their, you know, oh, they look at the nature and see, oh, there's decay also, so we have to revere that too. I'm sorry I interrupted you there,
Oh
but
no, you're good. You're good. This is a great conversation. I think like paganism kind of stems out of some form of Neoplatonism, which I feel is a huge issue when it comes to classical history, and Platonism itself when in classical history. So there's a big issue with that, and it goes into Hermeticism and stuff like that. Because I have some contention with some Hermetic things, not all of it. Obviously, I think it's more sound than most of the Western
Right.
occultism that we find, right? But there are some dilemmas in there, obviously. But I want to go back to Midsommar and Hereditary, because when I study those movies, Midsommar is filmed pretty much all in the light, right? So it's cult work in the light. It's in the daylight. So it's visible, And then Hereditary is all dark. So he has these two pillars in his, filmography. And these two pillars, I don't think you can understand one without the other, because you have one that's dealing with more of a possession-based demonic, you have the Hereditary, which has the demon. I can't remember his name, but
Paimon.
Paimon. Yeah, that's
Paimon, and
right.
it was the same symbol as Paimon from the Goetia.
Right.
And Aleister Crowley contacted Paimon.
Right. Right.
This is a very important demon that has legions of demons beneath him or whatever. It was a very similar symbol. They were like four like upraised bump things, and then the director took it down to three. He changed it a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe he just didn't want to do the bad magic like on film.
Maybe.
But that Payman is like from the Goetia, from like John Dee contacting the getting the magic language of
Right.
Enoch or whatever.
The Enochian language, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, that is a real thing, and that I don't know about the taking the head off. I don't know exactly what that symbolizes. I have to think about that. I think maybe it's like to remove the will from the body. I don't know, because so that the demon can take full possession.
Right.
I don't know what that symbolizes exactly, but that's what I would guess. But yeah, I do see that they're like one is dark and one is light, but it's still possession.
Yeah.
Like she gets at the end of Midsommar, she accepts willingly the violence of the cult and then does violence too. It's like a blood in type thing. And, and we assume that she's just part of this cult now,
Right. That is true. The Midsommar, she is possessed by the ideas of the cult,
Right.
So we could look at it that way. And at the end, you have the bear sacrificial ceremony in Midsommar, right, which is really symbolic because originally, like me and Doug talk about the stellar mythos and stuff like this, Ursa Minor, where Polaris is symbolic of the northern pole star, and it's symbolic of the highest of the high, the grand architect of the universe, and it's the little bear, so you have this masculine figure within a pyramidal shape. It's not completely a pyramid, but it's a triangular shape, and then the treehouse at the end of Hereditary is the triangular shape too. So you have these trifecta kind of symbolism going on in it. I haven't watched it in a long time, but there's a lot in there. There's a deep, and I really like Midsommar because of the fertility ritual that's going on, and you have May Day, the May dance going on, right?
Right, and it's kind of like a homage to the Wicker Man.
Yes.
One with Christopher Lee in the 70s. And in that one, the dude was put in a bear costume. He was in a bear costume, like trying to infiltrate and be like dress up. And so that too, like it used that then. And that one was very occult and had lots of real stuff in it too. And Christopher Lee was like the bad guy gets to speak all the truth, he had some good monologues in there. But that, once you start into this, Like, it's not just a movie. A lot of times it's like programming a worldview, you know. I don't know what Ari Aster is really up to, but
Right.
he's making some really good art.
Yeah,
That is,
he has some knowledge.
right, right,
He has some occult knowledge. Christopher Lee used to be one of my favorite actors, and he always played the dark occultist, right?
right.
And there's a movie. What is it called? It's called The Devil Rides Out. Have you ever seen that movie?
I think I have, yeah.
Yeah, and it has the cremation of care at the I think it's in the beginning of, or the mid of the movie actually, and you see like the Illuminati ritual that's going on, and they have the purple, like the head dude has the purple gown, and he's representative of the highest authority, and Baphomet, actually they summon Baphomet in it. It's a really crazy old movie, and I always turn people on to that. But Christopher Lee in that is actually a light occultist in that one, which is kind of off-putting because he's like fighting against the Satanism, you know. And the guy who they summon a devil, I think it was either it might have been Baphomet himself. They do that later, but earlier on they have a black guy that represents the devil, and he's African. So you know, there's a lot of symbolism in that. So it's wild. It's kind of funny too. It's like you laugh your ass off about it. But you brought up the bear thing, and I've been studying bear symbolism quite a bit lately. And we find that there's bear cults all over the world that currently are in effect today, right? So we find them in Italy, we find them in Japan. They have the bear dances. The indigenous Native American people have the bear dance currently. And it's a fertility dance. It's a fertility ritual that's carried on from these ancient totemic cultures. And it's really interesting because the bear always symbolizes the female for fertility. So in like the Native American, I think it's the Ute, the UTE tribe. They do it to awaken the bear spirit from the dormant hibernation that he's in, so that he can find a mate. So when they do their dances, the females will dance, and then they'll pick a mate out of the group. You know, so they get to choose who they mate with during the spring, right? So this
It's
bear
like
ritual,
Ishtar and Tammuz. Same thing. When Tammuz comes up from the underworld, he fornicates with Ishtar, and then it creates fertility on the land.
right?
Is that what this is about? Create
Yes.
like the beginning of spring.
Absolutely. It relates all to agriculture, and that's one of the most, you know, fundamental sciences of all these ancient cults, right? And ancient like nature cults is agriculture, because that was the thing that was solidifying the development of society, growth, and their connection to nature and all those things. So yeah, it's always about fertility when it comes down to it. It's all about the sex, man.
Yeah. Well, and that's where we're like God, is like when we combine the male and female together, and then creation happens, and then another
Right.
human exists. Like, that is really the only divine power that we have, is to create.
To create. Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, we make art too, like that.
Yeah. We try to emulate the divine, and you know, we all are aspects of the divine in many ways. You know, in our holistic being, we definitely are fractal portions of the one great spirit. You know, and kind of wrapping that back around to the punk community, I think that's why we have such an atheistic movement. And that's why the abortion stuff runs rampant in the punk community, is because they're extremely atheistic and they have no direction. So we have this oppression of, you know, the Christendom, right? We have this oppression of the Roman Catholic Church and all the other sects of the church, and, you know, Christianity in general. And they're like, well, I'm completely rebelling against all that, so I'm going to Satanism, or I'm going completely atheistic. You know?
To me.
Yeah, right. I get it, you know, because it's all through our whole culture. We live in like this solar cult world, you know, where it's just like everything is based around the solar cult, but it's really the dark solar cult, or the cult of the black sun, you could say, you know. And yeah, so it's like they rebel against that, so they go to the complete opposite extreme. And when they do that, you know, they're being controlled, because it's a dialectic, you know. And the dark occultists understand that they're going to have both these dynamics: those who willfully obey and those who will completely resist. and they use that, like you said, the Overton window in many aspects to control that paradigm of how that's shifting and how that applies into society and in politics, right? So we see, like when Trump came into being, I saw so many anarchists run right to the ballot and start voting, and I'm like, "Whoa, where did that come from, bro?
Weird.
What the heck? How did that happen?" And I was just so astounded. I'm like, you do realize that you're condoning, you're advocating for, and you are supporting slavery upon your fellow man and yourself, you know? Like you're literally advocating for them to place artificial and arbitrary laws into the system that can violate my liberties. So how can now I don't want to be around you really, because it's like, what else will you do if you'll do it at that level, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, they enslave all of us. You know,
Yes.
they're all Agent Smith. And they're all gonna.
They're all Agent Smith. You got that right.
Man, maybe someday we'll have maybe we could have a round table on movies, and
Yeah.
we need to talk to Douglas about movies too, because he's got a lot of stuff going. You know, he knows
Yeah,
what.
he's extreme. He's the guy who got me into movies really, like extremely deeply. He gave me my first cinematic book, like cinema language and cinematography, and I think he studied it in school, I believe. He knows a lot about movies.
Yeah, we should work something. We should make something happen. And
I'm down for that. I'm totally down.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Well, this has been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, man, I agree.
I'm gonna have to get off here soon.
Okay.
'Cause I got some
It's
people
fine.
calling me. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming and talking about anarchy and how it applies today in the world, how you see it, and I'm glad that you could share your time with us. And we appreciate, and we know we love to, we know that you're a good friend of the show, and we want to highlight your work. And where can people find you? SEEDtruth.com, please.
Yeah, you can find me at seedtruth.com. I have all my presentations, essays, and links on there. I think I have a link tree on there that will direct you to all my other channels. You can also find the Seed Truth Academy on YouTube and Odyssey and BitChute. You can also find me at the One Great Work Network as well. If you just go to the creator page at the top of the screen where the tab is, and then you'll find Brandon Martin underneath that. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I put all my work. And then I do a co-hosting with Nathan Cap from the Cubbyhole podcast. I haven't been on there in a little bit. We've kind of been taking a hiatus, but there's tons of podcasts on there. And we get into movies, we get into mind control, we get into a lot of that stuff. And it's a really great place for people to start. But if you go there, make sure to start at episode 1, because if you go all the way to the end, you're not going to understand what we're talking about. So make sure to start at episode 1. But yeah, Sean, it's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation, man. Been looking forward, to this for a long time, and I'd love to come back on anytime, man. Just hit me up.
Man. Well, Brandon, you're always welcome, and thank you so much for sharing what you've learned and how you see things. And we'll definitely do this again, man. And thank you again for joining us on Wake the Dead, and thank you, listeners. We will see you next time.